My son's house greeted me with the smell of citrus air freshener and Tracy's luscious smile. Wade stood just behind me, his hands in the pockets of expensive pants I knew I'd bought on credit. Mom, finally! He stepped forward, hugging me like we hadn't seen each other in decades, even though he'd only come to visit me for my father's funeral 3 years ago, and only for a day. My sister-in-law, fixing her impeccably styled blonde hair, nuzzled the air near my cheek. Hadley, you look beautiful, so chipper. I caught a note of surprise in her tone, as if a woman of 65 must be in a wheelchair. I smiled demurely, feeling my lower back aching after the 4-hour ride. 30 years of working in a textile factory had left me with not only a modest pension, but also chronic back pain, which I had learned to hide almost as well as my true thoughts. Thank you, darling. You too. I looked around. The 2-story house in the upscale Lake Forest neighborhood looked exactly as Wade had described on the phone, spacious, with modern furnishings and high ceilings. Expensive framed photos hung on the walls. My son and his family in front of the ocean, at a ski resort, on the deck of a yacht. I knew these vacations were paid for with credit cards, the bills for which came each month with menacing red marks. Grandma! A voice came from upstairs, and I saw Kira, my only granddaughter, standing at the staircase railing. She waved at me, not taking her eyes off the phone screen, and immediately disappeared back into her room. In the past 2 years, she had gone from a smiling child to a sullen teenager with her eyes always downcast. At that age, I was already working full-time to help my parents make ends meet. Come on, Mom. I'll show you to your room. Wade took me under his elbow, and Tracy stayed in the living room, already staring at her tablet. I noticed her wrinkle when one of my old suitcases hit her spotless white couch. We made our way up the stairs, and I took a deep breath, trying to settle the ache in my spine. Stairs had always been my personal challenge, but I didn't want to start my new life at my son's house with a complaint. Right here. He pushed open a door at the very end of the hallway. The room was smaller than I expected. A narrow bed, a small dresser, and a desk took up almost all the available space. The window overlooked the neighbor's fence. Isn't that the guest room? I asked, remembering how Wade had promised me a spacious bedroom with a private bath on the phone. Yeah. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my gaze. We'd planned to vacate the office, but Tracy had some important deals to do, and she needed the workspace. And we've set up a gym in the large guest bedroom. You know how important it is to stay in shape at our age. I barely restrained myself from reminding him that when I was our age, I was standing 12 hours a day at the machine, and I didn't need any special equipment. Instead, I just nodded and set the suitcase on the floor. Of course I understand. It's very cozy. Wade exhaled in relief. Great. Make yourself comfortable, and I'll go help Tracy with dinner. Oh, and the bathroom's at the end of the hall. If you need anything, holler. He left, closing the door behind him, and I finally let myself sink into the bed. The springs creaked under my weight. I pulled a blister of painkillers out of my pocket and swallowed the pills without drinking. It was a trick I'd learned back in the factory, where breaks were strictly regulated and pain was not. Just a month ago, I had my own house in Wisconsin. A small one, but mine. After Robert died, I'd lived there alone for 3 years, cultivating a vegetable garden, reading detectives, and saving a little from retirement. But when Wade called and offered to move in with them, I said yes. Mom, why do you need to keep a whole house by yourself? Sell it, move in with us. Put the money in an account, earn interest, and live in warmth and care with your family. The word family from his lips sounded like an advertisement for washing powder, bright but insincere. I unpacked my things, placing the only thing dear to me on the dresser, a picture of me and Robert taken on our wedding day. He had died of a heart attack right behind the wheel of his truck, on his way back from work. The medics said he died instantly, and that was the only consolation. I was snapped out of my musings by Tracy's voice calling everyone to dinner. I went downstairs, trying not to crinkle my nose at every step. The table was set with the kind of ostentatious elegance I'd seen on TV shows, where all the families seemed perfect. White plates, silverware, candles in the center of the table. Tracy fussed with the final preparations, glancing at her watch. I hope you like lasagna, Hadley. It's our family specialty. A signature dish from a box, I thought, as I noticed the half-finished package in the trash, but said aloud, I love lasagna. Kira was the last one to come down, still on her phone. Kira, put the phone away, Wade commanded with contrived sternness. Grandma's here. We're having dinner as a family. The girl rolled her eyes, but obediently put the phone in her pocket, giving me a quick appraising glance. So, Mom, Wade poured the wine into glasses, pouring the least for me. Have you sorted out the money from the house sale yet? Here it is. I'd been waiting for that question since I'd arrived, but I didn't think it would come so quickly, not even before I'd unpacked. The money's in the account, I answered neutrally. Just like we discussed. Great. He glanced over at Tracy. You know, we've been thinking. It's a great time to invest. I have a broker I know who's showing amazing results. Yields up to 20% a year. I slowly chewed on a piece of lasagna that was surprisingly tasteless. What about the risks? Wade waved his hand. What risks, Mom? They're blue chips. They're the safest thing in the world. I worked in a factory all my life, but I could count money better than most financiers. The need to stretch a modest salary to pay bills, medicines, and children's education taught me financial discipline. I'll think about it, I replied, and I saw a look of irritation flash across my son's face. You said you wanted the money to work? Tracy interjected. And now it's just sitting there dead weight. Speaking of money, Wade continued as if he hadn't noticed my restraint. How much is your pension now? Last time we talked, you hadn't gotten the paperwork done yet. This is the moment of truth. I knew it would come up sooner or later. My pension was $4,700, quite a sum for 3 decades of hard work and maximum contributions. Robert had always insisted that we save as much as possible, and he was right. About $1,100, I lied, watching for reactions. Wade's and Tracy's faces stretched in sync. 1,100, my son interjected. But you've been working for, how long? 30 years? 32 years, I corrected him. But you know how it is. Private factory, minimum wage. Tracy forced out a smile that didn't touch her eyes. Well, it's good to have you with us now, Hadley. We'll take care of you. In her voice, I heard disappointment and something else. Irritation? Yeah, Mom, Wade said. I'm glad you're not alone. The important thing is that you're not alone. And the money. We'll make money somehow, won't we, honey? Tracy nodded, but her fingers nervously clenched the stem of the glass. Absolutely. Although we're in a bit of a rough patch at the moment. Mortgage, loans, Kira's private school. I looked at my granddaughter, who seemed completely disinterested in the adult conversation. Private school? I thought Kira went to a regular school. We transferred her last year, Wade explained. You need a good education in Lake Forest or you can't get anywhere. $26,000 a year, Tracy whispered, as if talking to herself. And that's just the basic program, no extra classes. I nodded silently. 26,000. That was the kind of money that could buy a house in my day. A small one, but your own. By the way, Hadley, Tracy suddenly perked up. You wouldn't mind looking after Kira sometimes, would you? Wade and I work late a lot, and leaving a teenager alone these days is so unsettling. I'm 16, Kira mumbled. I'm not a kid. Tracy ignored her. And maybe you could help with dinner sometimes? I have so many client meetings that sometimes I don't have the energy to stand at the stove. And with the cleaning, Wade said, you know how tired Tracy gets at work, and we have such a big house. I looked at my son, the one I'd once spoon-fed and taught to tie his shoelaces. Now, without blinking an eye, he'd appointed me housekeeper and babysitter. Sure, I said. I'll help. Great, Tracy exclaimed. Now let's talk about what we're going to do with our summer vacation. I think Barbados is going to be just too crowded this year. Maybe we should consider the Maldives. And they plunged into a discussion of resorts that cost more than my annual income at the factory. No one asked my opinion. I was the furniture here. Old, not very comfortable, but still necessary. After dinner, I volunteered to do the dishes, even though my back was starting to ache from sitting on the uncomfortable chair for so long. Tracy was relieved and retired to the living room to watch some reality show. Wade stared at his laptop, occasionally answering his phone and lowering his voice when he talked about money. I stood at the sink, mechanically soaping plates, and thought about what my life had become. 3 years ago, I buried my husband. A month ago, I sold the house I'd lived in for nearly 4 decades. And today I stood in someone else's kitchen, listening to my own son discussing with his wife how to get a better shot at my savings. For the first time in my life, I lied about money, about my pension, earned through years of hard work, sleepless nights at the machine, taking extra shifts to pay for college for this son who now looked at me like an ATM machine with legs. I wiped the last plate and set it on the shelf. My lower back ached mercilessly, but this pain was familiar, almost native, unlike the pain of betrayal, which was brand new. $1,100, I repeated to myself as I climbed the stairs to my cramped room. I wonder how long their ostentatious hospitality will last when they realize I'm not worth expecting a financial infusion from them. Well, we'll find out soon enough. I went into my room, closed the door, and pulled a small notebook out of my suitcase. In it, I'd been writing down all of our family's income and expenses for years. On the last page, there was a number, 4,700, my real pension. I ran my finger over the line and then resolutely crossed it out and wrote, 1,100. The experiment began. It had been a week since I'd stepped into Wade and Tracy's house. Only 7 days, but the atmosphere had changed so dramatically that it felt like I'd been living here for months. The first morning started with Tracy knocking on my door at 7 in the morning. Hadley, could you make Kira breakfast? Wade and I need to leave early. I struggled to get my eyes open. At the factory, we started at 6, and waking up early had been a part of my life for 32 years. But since retiring, I'd finally allowed myself the luxury of waking up without an alarm clock. Sure, Tracy, I replied, fumbling for my slippers by the bed. What does she usually eat? Anything to eat. She's been so picky lately. By the time I got down to the kitchen, no one was home. There was a note on the table, scribbled in Wade's handwriting. Client meeting rescheduled, we'll be back late. Don't forget to pick up Kira from school at 3. No please or thank you. Just an instruction, as if I wasn't his mother but a hired help. I sighed and started making breakfast for my granddaughter. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, just like little Wade had once loved. Kira came downstairs when the food was already cooling on the table. Hi, she mumbled, not looking up from her phone. Good morning, honey, I set a plate in front of her. I made breakfast. She looked at the food as if I'd offered her a plate of worms. I don't eat eggs, she cut me off. I don't eat breakfast at all. With that, Kira grabbed an apple from the vase and headed for the exit. Wait, I called out to her. Your parents asked me to drive you to school. No need, she rolled her eyes. Brittany's dropping me off. Her mom's waiting outside. The door slammed shut and I was alone in the empty kitchen. The breakfast I'd spent half an hour making was still untouched. I ate my own toast, but I had no appetite. Instead, I began to explore the house. It looked different in the morning sunlight, colder and more impersonal, like a page from a furniture catalog. Not a single personal item, not a single photo from a picnic or family party, just staged studio shots of everyone smiling the same strained smile. In the living room was a huge flat-screen TV that never seemed to turn off. In the corner was a bar filled with expensive whiskeys that, judging by the layer of dust on some of the bottles, were meant more for display to guests than for consumption. In the dining room, I found bills carelessly tossed on a console near the entrance. I hadn't intended to snoop, but the red just income marks were conspicuous. Wade had never been known for financial discipline. Even as a kid, he was always losing his lunch money or spending it on toys. I picked up one of the envelopes. The credit card statement showed debts in an amount that could buy a small apartment in my day. And that was just one card. There were at least 5 on the table. In the afternoon, after I cleaned the house and cooked dinner, which no one would probably appreciate, I decided to follow Kira to school, despite her protest in the morning. The school was 15 minutes away, in an even more upscale neighborhood than where my son lived. The building itself resembled a small university campus, brick buildings surrounded by manicured lawns and sports fields. I parked at the gate and waited. The students came out in groups, all wearing the same uniforms, navy blue blazers and plaid skirts for the girls. I spotted Kira surrounded by a few friends. They were laughing at something on one of their phones. When she saw me, her face instantly changed. "What are you doing here?" she asked, walking over to the car. "I told you I was going with Brittany. Your father asked me to pick you up," I said calmly. "Get in, I'll take you home." Kira sighed defiantly, but got in the car, slamming the door loudly. "You know," she said after a few minutes of silence, "you don't have to do everything they tell you." I gave her a surprised look. "What do you mean?" "Dad and Mom." She looked out the window, as if talking to herself. "They think you're going to be their personal servants now." I didn't know what to say. There was truth in what she said, but to admit it out loud would be to admit that my own son saw me as nothing more than a free housekeeper. "I'm just helping out the family," I finally said. "That's what grandmothers do." Kira snorted. "Yeah, right. And Mom and Dad just help you spend your money." That was the end of the conversation. We drove the rest of the way in silence. That evening, Wade came home later than usual. He seemed annoyed, checking his phone and frowning every now and then. "Hey, Mom," he said in passing. "Is dinner ready?" "Yeah, I made a casserole," I replied, watching him pour himself a whiskey. "Rough day?" "Not really." He gulped down the contents of his glass. Tracy would be late, she had a client meeting. At dinner, Wade was unusually silent. Kira, as usual, was staring at her phone, and I tried to make conversation, but I got only one-word phrases in response. "Mom," Wade said suddenly, pushing his plate away. "Have you thought about investing the money from the house sale in some business? Like mine?" I froze with my fork in my hand. "What kind of business, Wade? You work for an insurance company." "I mean my project." He lowered his voice, though no one could hear us except Kira. "My partner and I are launching an investment fund. Several clients have already invested, but we need more seed money." I looked at my son suspiciously. "How much do you need?" "Only 50,000, he said, as if it were pocket money. "You'll get a share in the company, and in a year or two, your investment will at least double." I thought of the bills marked approved and the incessant talk about not having enough money for Kira's mortgage and school. "Wade, you know I can't risk my savings. It's all I have for my old age." "What risk, Mom?" He was getting annoyed. "It's a win-win. I'll personally oversee your investments." That's what's bothering me, I thought, but I said it out loud. "I need to think about it, son. This is a big decision." His face changed, hard and cold. "Of course you do, just not for too long. Opportunities like this don't wait." He got up from the table, leaving the dirty dishes behind, and retreated to his office. I could hear him talking loudly on the phone, discussing some stock and interest. Kira, who didn't seem to be listening to our conversation, suddenly looked up from the phone. "Don't give him the money," she said quietly. "Seriously, Grandma, don't give it to him." And without waiting for my response, she too walked away, leaving me alone to clear the table. The next morning, I decided to take a break from housework and head to the town library. I needed a place to think quietly, away from the strained atmosphere of Wade's house. The Lake Forest Library turned out to be a beautiful building with high ceilings and huge windows. I headed to the fiction section, hoping to find a new detective. Detectives were always a comfort to me. They solved problems and justice was served, unlike real life. "Can I help you?" I heard a voice behind me. Turning around, I saw a tall, gray-haired man with attentive gray eyes. The name tag pinned to his tweed jacket read, "Harris Pierce Volunteer." "I'm looking for a modern detective story," I replied. "Preferably not too gory." He smiled, and the wrinkles around his eyes deepened. "Then you're in luck. I specialize in detectives without too much violence. Follow me." Harris led me along the shelves, stopping occasionally to pull out a book. "Is this your first time in our library?" he asked, handing me a small stack of books. I would remember such a connoisseur of good detectives. "Yes, I recently moved in with my son," I replied. "Hadley Prescott." "Nice to meet you, Hadley." He extended his hand. "I'm Harris Pierce, former financial consultant, and now a retired library enthusiast." We got to talking, and I learned that Harris had been widowed 5 years ago and had been devoting his spare time to volunteering at the library ever since. He was smart, educated, and had that gentle sense of humor that makes conversation enjoyable without having to laugh out loud. "If you enjoy these books, come back again," he said in parting. "I'm here Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays." I left the library with 3 detectives and a strange sense of lightness that I hadn't felt since moving in. A cold reception awaited me at home. Tracy stood in the middle of the kitchen with her arms crossed over her chest. "Where have you been, Hadley? I called you a few times." I pulled my phone out of my bag and saw 3 missed calls. In the library, I turned the sound off. "I'm sorry, Tracy. I was in the library and I didn't hear the call." "The library?" She said it like I said on Mars. "But I had to pick up the dry cleaning today. I asked you to do that yesterday." I didn't remember asking for the dry cleaning, but I decided not to argue. "I'm sorry, I forgot. I'll go right away." "It's late." She sighed irritably. "They closed an hour ago. Now Wade would have to go to the meeting in a stale shirt." For the next week, the atmosphere in the house grew more and more tense. Tracy barely spoke to me, limiting herself to brief instructions about household chores. Wade was coming home later and later, and he was drinking more often. One day I heard them arguing in the bedroom. "What are we going to do about the loan?" Tracy's voice was ringing with tension. "The bank won't wait forever." "I'll handle it," Wade replied. "I have a plan." "What kind of plan? The same one with the investment fund? Or the biotech stock? All your plans end the same way. We get deeper in debt. If your mother wasn't such a cheapskate, we'd have solved this problem by now." I backed away from the door, not wanting to hear any more. So here's the thing. They were counting on my money to pay off their own debts. I wonder how long it would be before that money dissolved just like all the others before it. On Saturday, I decided to join a local gardening group I saw advertised on a board in the library. Gardening has always been my outlet, a way to forget about back pain and everyday worries. The meeting was held in a community garden near the center of town. About a dozen people, mostly women my age, gathered around beds of flowers and vegetables. "You must be Hadley?" A woman with short gray hair and lively brown eyes approached me. "I'm Lauren Riley, the group coordinator. Harris said you might stop by." "Harris?" I was surprised. "You two know each other?" "Lake Forest is one big village, despite its pretenses of elitism," she laughed. "Come on, I'll show you around." Lauren was a straightforward and energetic woman who had been a local school teacher for 20 years before retiring. She knew everyone and everything in town and wasn't shy about sharing her observations. "So you live with your son and his family?" she asked as we were weeding a bed of carrots. "Brave woman." "Why brave?" I was surprised. "Because living with grown children is like going back to prison voluntarily when you're released," she winked. "I know what I'm talking about. I tried living with my daughter after my husband died. 3 months later, I ran away to my own apartment." I laughed involuntarily. "Yeah, it's not easy. I admit it. If you ever need shelter or just a cup of tea without lecturing, my house is always open," she said, handing me a business card with an address. "And between you and me, I've got some great whiskey for special occasions." That evening, I returned home feeling that I had finally found something of mine in Lake Forest, a library, a garden club, and maybe some friends. But there was a surprise waiting for me at home. In the driveway stood a brand new silver Lexus with a big red bow on the hood. Tracy was twirling around it like a kid around a Christmas tree. "Do you like it?" Wade asked, noticing my surprise. Tracy had wanted a car like this for a long time. "It's beautiful," I said, "but I thought you were having financial difficulties." "Oh, it's a special offer from the dealer," he said quickly. "A favorable lease. It was practically a bargain." I nodded, pretending to believe him. Practically free usually meant catastrophically expensive, but I don't want to think about it, Wade said. "What about your loans?" I asked, and I couldn't help myself. "You said the bank was demanding repayment," Wade's face petrified. "Were you eavesdropping?" "No, it's just that this house doesn't have very thick walls." Tracy walked toward us, radiating happiness. "Isn't she beautiful, Hadley?" She ran her hand over the shiny hood. "Now I'll be able to impress my clients. That's so important in the real estate business." "I'm sure it is," I replied. "By the way, Wade, how's your investment fund coming along? The one you needed my 50 grand for?" Embarrassment flashed across my son's face, which quickly turned to annoyance. We found other investors, he said. People who understand the value of opportunity. That evening, just as I was about to go to bed, Tracy entered my room without knocking. She looked tense, but she tried to sound casual. Hadley, Wade, and I were thinking, it's hard for you to walk up the stairs with your back, isn't it? I was worried. My back hadn't really bothered them before. It's a bit of a nuisance sometimes, but I manage. We thought you'd be more comfortable in the little room downstairs next to the laundry room, she continued. There's no window, but you don't have to go up the stairs every time. I stared at her, not believing my ears. They were going to put me in a closet with no windows? Why do you want my room? I asked bluntly. Tracy looked a little embarrassed. Well, Kira complains that she doesn't have enough room for her classes. Her school counselor thinks a teenager should have enough personal space to express herself. I exhaled slowly, trying to contain my anger. You know, Tracy, I think I'm going to stay here. I like looking out the window in the morning. But you're back. My back can survive the stairs. It's been through more than that. She pressed her lips together, clearly unhappy with my refusal. Suit yourself. It's just that we're worried about you. When the door closed behind her, I sank down on the bed and thought. The experiment with lying about my pension was yielding results faster than I'd expected. $1,100 a month was clearly not living up to their expectations, and now they were trying to minimize even the small space they had allotted me in their home. I pulled out my phone and opened the messages. Will you be at the library again tomorrow? I texted Harris, whose number I'd gotten before I left. The reply came almost immediately. Yes, from 11 to 3. I'll be glad to see you. I smiled and turned out the light. Maybe there was still a chance to find something good in Lake Forest, even if that something was outside my son's house. Thursday morning began with a fine rain. The droplets tapped on the windowsill, creating the kind of melancholy melody that is good for thinking. And I had a lot to think about. In the past month at Wade's house, I'd become convinced that my experiment with lying about my pension had uncovered the unpalatable truth about my relationship with my son and his family. I sat in the kitchen, drinking tea and looking at the bank statement I'd received in the mail the day before. My real $4,700 was coming in every month, and my expenses were minimal. I hardly spent any money living at my son's house. When I heard footsteps on the stairs, I hastily folded the papers and tucked them into an envelope. But something fell out and remained lying on the table. I didn't notice it while greeting a sleepy Kira. Good morning, dear, I set a bowl of oatmeal in front of my granddaughter. Over the weeks, I discovered that, contrary to her initial statements, she did eat breakfast if the food was already on the table, and she didn't have to cook it herself. Morning, she mumbled, yawning. Rain sucks. It's good for sleeping, I smiled, pouring her orange juice. Do you need a ride to school today? I'd stopped offering my help as a driver in the past month, realizing that Kira preferred to ride with friends. Yeah, Josh is picking me up. We have a history project today. She looked up from her phone. Grandma, can I ask you a question? Sure. Do you really only get a $1,100 pension? I froze with the cup in my hand. Why would you ask me that? Why are you asking? Kira shrugged his shoulders. It's just that Mom and Dad keep saying that you're, well, a burden on the family budget. But I've done the math. You cook, you clean, you pick up the dry cleaning, you babysit me even though I'm not a kid anymore. If they paid a live-in helper for all that, it would cost well over $1,100 a month. I looked at my 16-year-old granddaughter with wonder. Behind her outward aloofness was a sharp analytical mind. It's a difficult question, Kira, I said carefully. Sometimes adults test each other. She snorted. Lice tests, you mean? I'm not an idiot, Grandma. I can see what's going on in this house. Before I could answer, the front door slammed and Wade walked into the kitchen. He was usually at work by this time, and his sudden appearance took me by surprise. I forgot my paperwork, he explained, heading toward his office. I breathed a sigh of relief and started to clear my desk. But a few minutes later, Wade came back into the kitchen with a piece of paper in his hand. His face was oddly calm, but the jowls in his cheekbones showed tension. Kira, go to your room, he said in a tone that brooked no objection. But Josh is coming over right now. I said, Go to your room. Kira, startled by her father's sudden outburst, grabbed the phone and hurried upstairs. When her footsteps subsided, Wade placed the piece of paper he held in his hand on the table. "What's this?" he asked in a deceptively calm voice. I looked at it and felt the blood rush from my face. It was a page from a bank statement, showing the amount of my last paycheck, $4,700. "That's my statement," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It had accidentally fallen out of the envelope. "Accidentally," Wade repeated, and there was such bitterness in his voice that I shuddered. "All this time you've been lying to me, to your son." I straightened, setting the cup aside. "Yes, I lied about my pension. And you know what? That little experiment showed me the truth about our family." "An experiment?" His voice shook. "You were playing with us? Testing us?" What was I supposed to do? I felt the wave of anger I'd been holding back all these weeks rising inside. From the moment I stepped foot in this house, you and Tracy had only seen me as a purse on legs and a free housekeeper. Wade blushed. "That's not true. We welcomed you into our family, gave you a roof over your head. You put me in a cubbyhole and treated me like a servant." I raised my voice, unable to hold back any longer. "Hadley, cook dinner. Hadley, pick up the dry cleaning. Hadley, watch Kira. And then you had the nerve to ask me to move into a windowless closet to make room." "We were worried about your back," Wade exclaimed, but his eyes were running, giving away the lie. "Don't you dare lie to my face!" I pounded my palm on the table. "You and Tracy wanted my money. I heard you talking about loans that needed to be paid off right away. You were counting on me to finance your lavish lifestyle." Wade's face contorted with anger. "What did you expect? That I'd admire your $1,100? What are they good for in Lake Forest? You couldn't even pay your share of the utilities." "My share?" I couldn't believe my ears. "You invited me to live with you, said you'd take care of me, and now you're billing me? Everyone has to contribute." He raised his voice. "And you lied to me, your own son. You pretended to be a caring mother for so many years, and yet you pretended?" I choked with indignation. "I worked 12 hours a day in a factory so you could get an education. I ruined my back standing at a machine so you could go to college, which, by the way, you dropped out of after your sophomore year. I saved money on everything, even pain medication, so you could have opportunities I didn't." I could see how my words hurt him, but Wade was too furious to back down. "And where's the gratitude?" I continued. "You invited me over just to get your hands on my money. And when you decided it was too little, you started treating me like a burden." "That's not true," he repeated stubbornly, but without the same confidence. "No. What about Tracy's new Lexus?" I grinned bitterly. "You're complaining about your finances, but you're buying a $50,000 car. You save money on my room, but you pay crazy money for Kira's private school. It's all fake, Wade. Your life is a house of cards of credit and ostentatious prosperity." Wade's face turned white with anger. "Enough," he hissed. "You have no right to judge us. You're an old, bitter woman who's jealous that we have something you never had." Those words hit me like a slap in the face. I looked at my son and didn't recognize him. Where had the boy I had once rocked in my arms gone? That teenager who used to bring me tea when I came back from the night shift? "I had the most important thing, Wade," I said quietly. "I had a family that I loved more than anything in the world. I thought it was mutual." "Was?" He clung to the word. "So no more? You're giving up on us for money?" "No, son." I shook my head. "It was you who gave up on me when you realized my pension wasn't big enough for your appetite." We stood across from each other, separated by the kitchen table, and 32 years of misunderstanding. I could see anger, shame, and something else struggling in Wade's eyes, perhaps remnants of the love that had once bound us together. "You know what?" he said suddenly, his voice as cold as ice. "I don't want to live under the same roof with someone who doesn't trust me, who tests and experiments me." "What do you mean?" I tensed, sensing where this conversation was going. "I want you out of my house," he said. "Tonight." Even though I'd almost expected those words, they still hit me in the heart. "You're kicking your own mother out?" I asked, struggling to keep the tremor out of my voice. "I'm asking you to leave a house you're clearly uncomfortable in." He looked away. And we don't feel comfortable around you either. Wade, I took a step toward him. Let's talk calmly. I admit I was wrong to lie about the pension. But understand, I just wanted to make sure that you invited me out of love, not out of... Stop it. He raised his hand. I don't want to discuss this anymore. Pack your things and go. Where would I go? That question came out of my mouth involuntarily. I'd sold my house in Wisconsin, and all my stuff was either sold or stacked up here in the cramped room upstairs. That's not my problem. Wade cut him off. You have money, $4,700 a month. Get an apartment, a hotel, whatever. Just not here. At that moment, Kira appeared in the kitchen. Her face showed she'd heard the whole conversation. Dad, you can't do this, she said quietly but firmly. Wade turned to his daughter, his eyes narrowed. Stay out of adult conversations, Kira. This isn't adult conversation, it's bullying. The girl suddenly raised her voice. You and Mom have been using Grandma as a housekeeper all this time, and now you're kicking her out on the street? Kira! Wade was stunned by the rebellion of his daughter, who usually stayed out of family conflicts. It's true, and you know it, Kira continued, her eyes glistening with tears. Grandma cooks, cleans, picks up your stupid shirts from the dry cleaners, and you don't even give her a proper room. Don't you talk to your father like that, Wade hissed. Go to your room and get ready for school right now. No, Kira crossed her arms over her chest. I'm staying with Grandma. Wade's face contorted with anger. So that's it? You're choosing to side with this liar against your own parents? I'm choosing the side of the person who at least asks how my day went, Kira replied bitterly. Someone who remembers my birthday and doesn't call my hobby of photography a waste of time. I could see how every word Kira said hit Wade harder than my accusations. He looked at his daughter like he was seeing her for the first time. That's what she did to you, he hissed, pointing at me. Turned you against your parents. It's all her influence. No, Dad, Kira said calmly. It's all your influence. And Mom's. You're the ones who ruined it. Wade stood there as if struck by thunder. Then his face hardened. I'm not going to continue this circus, he said coldly. Hadley, you have 3 hours to pack your things and leave my house. If you don't, I'll call the police. You wouldn't dare, I breathed out, not believing my ears. Check. He tossed the car keys he held in his hand onto the table. And don't try to manipulate my daughter. You've done enough already. With those words, he walked out of the kitchen, slamming the front door loudly. Kira and I were left standing in the middle of the kitchen, stunned by what had happened. Grandma, Kira said quietly as she approached me, I'm sorry about him. He can't handle the money, and now he's got problems at the office. But that's no excuse. I hugged my granddaughter, feeling her shoulders shake. You shouldn't have gotten involved, dear, I said softly. This is a conflict between me and your father. But you're my grandmother, she replied simply. And it's not your fault that they're so... She didn't finish the sentence, but I understood what she wanted to say. What are you going to do now? Kira asked, pulling away. Where are you going to go? I took a deep breath, trying to collect my thoughts. Where am I going to live? Who would I turn to for help? Lauren's face flashed into my mind with her offer of shelter and the business card with the address I kept in my wallet. I have options, don't worry. I stroked Kira's hair. You better go get ready for school. Your friend Josh is probably waiting by now. I'm not going to school, she said firmly. I'll help you pack. No, Kira. I took her by the shoulders gently but firmly. You have to go to school. I can manage on my own. And you need to study. It's important. More important than your family? She asked bitterly. Nothing is more important than family, I said. That's why I don't want you to miss school because of me. Your father would only get more angry, Kira reluctantly agreed, but she made me promise to let her know where I was staying. When she left, I slowly made my way up to my room and began to put my things away. There wasn't much, a few changes of clothes, books, photos, and personal documents. My whole life fit into 2 suitcases. Before I left, I wrote a short note that I left on the kitchen table. Wade, I'm sorry I lied to you, but I'm even more sorry that lie exposed the truth about our relationship. I'll be in touch through Kira. I hope someday we can talk in peace. Mom. Taking my suitcases, I took one last look around the house that would never be mine and walked out the door. My new life began at 65, with 2 suitcases, a sore back, and bitterness in my heart. But in a strange way, I also felt relief. The masks had been ripped off, the truth had come out, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew that now, at last, I would be able to start living for real. The rain had picked up by the time I got out of the cab at Lauren Riley's house. The small 2-story cottage with the bright blue door seemed like a true refuge on this dank day. I stood on the porch with 2 suitcases, drenched and confused, gathering my courage to make the call. Finally, I pressed the bell, and a few seconds later, the door swung open. Hadley? Lauren gave me a surprised look. God, you're soaked to the skin. Come on in. I stepped through the door, leaving wet footprints on the mat. I'm sorry to intrude, Lauren. I had nowhere else to go. She helped me out of my drenched coat and led me into the living room, where the fireplace crackled merrily. Sit here and I'll get a towel and something hot. Once I was alone, I looked around. Lauren's house was like her own cozy, unpretentious, but with character. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, an antique piano piled with sheet music, a soft couch with worn armrests. Lauren returned with a towel, a blanket, and a mug of something steaming. Here, it's a hot toddy, with honey and whiskey like I promised. She sat down next to me. Now tell me what happened. Wade kicked me out of the house. I struggled to say the words. He found out I'd lied about my pension. Lauren laughed, but then she cut herself off when she saw the look on my face. I'm sorry, but that's genius. Did the experiment work? More than successful, I grinned bitterly. It turned out that my son only saw me as a walking ATM machine. I told her everything. About the cramped room, about the endless errands, about the offer to move into a closet without a window, about the new Lexus on the background of alleged financial difficulties. Bastard, she said. I'm sorry, Hadley, but your son is a real bastard. He's a mess. He's living beyond his means. He's in debt. That's no excuse for throwing your own mother out on the street. Lauren cut her off. You can stay here as long as you need to. I have a guest bedroom on the second floor, a real bedroom with a window, she added sarcastically. In the morning, Lauren woke me up with a knock on the door. Hadley, you have company. When I came downstairs, I saw Harris Pierce sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. Good morning. He stood up when he saw me. I hope I'm not too early. Harris called to see if you wanted to come to the library today, Lauren explained. I told him about your situation. Over breakfast, Harris told her he'd worked as a financial consultant for a large bank before retiring. He specialized in protecting seniors' assets from fraud. Unfortunately, the most common scammers are family members, he said, stirring his coffee. Especially children who think they're entitled to their parents' money. Wade's not a fraud, I countered. He's just confused. Harris and Lauren exchanged glances. Hadley, Harris began cautiously, you might want to check your credit history, just in case. Why? I don't have any credit. Just a mortgage on a house in Wisconsin that Robert and I paid off 10 years ago. Still, check it out, Harris said insistently. I've seen this kind of situation too often. After breakfast, Harris and I went to the library. He helped me query my credit history. What we saw made me cold. There were 3 credit cards in my name with a total debt of almost $40,000. The last one had been opened only 2 months ago, around the time I'd moved in with Wade. There must be some kind of mistake, I whispered, staring at the screen. I never opened those accounts. Harris nodded grimly. I'm afraid it's not a mistake, Hadley. Someone used your personal information to arrange loans in your name. Wade? But how? He'd need my signature. Which is easy to forge if you have access to the documents, Harris finished. You lived in the same house. He had your papers at his fingertips. I remembered how I'd carelessly tossed the file in my dresser drawer when I'd moved in. What am I supposed to do? I asked, feeling panic coming on. First, call the banks and report the fraud, Harris said firmly. Then file a police report. The police? But that's my son, who stole your identity and took out loans on you, Harris reminded him. Hadley, this is a serious offense. If you don't stop it now, the debts will only grow. Back at Lauren's house, I found a strange woman in the living room. She jumped up when she saw me, and I was surprised to recognize my daughter, Gloria. We hadn't seen each other in almost 2 years since she had moved to Portland. Mom, she hugged me awkwardly. Wade called, said that you were in trouble. Hello, Gloria. I sat down across from her. What exactly did Wade say? That you lied to him about your pension, gave him some kind of test, and then left, slamming the door. She looked at me puzzled. Is that true? Not really. I did lie about the amount of the pension. But Wade didn't mention that he kicked me out of the house when he found out the truth? Gloria frowned. He said you'd had a fight and you decided to leave. Of course he said that. I grinned bitterly. Wade always had a way of making things look good for himself. And you've always taken his side, Gloria said suddenly. All his life, Wade had been your favorite. No matter what he did, you always defended him. Gloria, that's not true. Yes, it is. When I wanted to go to art school, you said it wasn't serious. And when Wade dropped out of college, you said he was finding his way. When I divorced Mark, you blamed me for not keeping the family together. And when Wade and Tracy almost divorced because of his affair, you rushed over to help them mend their relationship. Every word Gloria said hit me like a whip. Was I really that blind? I didn't know you felt that way, I said quietly. Because I never asked. And now that your precious son has finally shown his true colors, you expect me to come running to save you? I didn't ask you to come, I reminded you. Wade called you. Gloria paused, as if only now realizing that fact. Yeah, Wade. He said you were in trouble, that you needed help. I told her about the loans Harris and I had discovered. Gloria's face grew more and more tense with each word. Are you sure it's Wade? She asked when I was done. Who else? Who else had access to my documents? And what are you going to do? Harris and I are going to the police tomorrow, I said firmly. I have to protect myself. You're going to send your own son to prison? Gloria sounded shocked. I hope it doesn't come to that, but I can't let him continue to use my name to get loans. Gloria stood up and started pacing nervously around the room. Mom, think again. This is a family matter. We can settle it between us. How? Wade already owes $40,000 that's in my name. Are you suggesting I pay it off myself? No, of course not, she rubbed her forehead. Maybe we could, I don't know, get together and talk about it? Wade kicked me out of the house and threatened to call the police if I didn't leave, I reminded her. I don't think he's in the mood for constructive dialogue. Gloria looked lost. But that would destroy the family forever. I didn't destroy the family, Gloria. The next morning, Harris and I drove to the Lake Forest police station. It took almost 3 hours to fill out the paperwork. The officer taking the report was polite, but I could see the judgment in his eyes. Another old woman complaining about her own children. We'll investigate, Mrs. Prescott, he said, taking the completed forms. But I must warn you, these cases often end in reconciliation. I'm not looking for revenge, officer, I replied. I just want to protect my finances. Back at Lauren's house, I found Wade on the porch. He was sitting on the steps, slouching and resting his face in his palms. When our car pulled up, he looked up and I saw that he had been crying. Mom, he stood up when he saw me. We need to talk. Harris tensed. Hadley, you don't have to talk to him. It's okay, Harris. I squeezed his hand. I can handle it. Wade and I sat down on a bench in Lauren's garden. He was silent for a while, looking at his hands. The police came by this morning, he said finally. They asked about the credit cards. What did you tell them? I denied everything, he sighed. But they found papers with your forged signature in my office. Wade, why? I asked, feeling my heart clench. I don't know what came over me, Mom. He shook his head. Tracy and I were in debt. The bank threatened to foreclose on the house. I was desperate. So they put the loans in my name, I finished. I was going to pay them off myself. I swear you wouldn't even know about it. I had a deal in mind that was going to bring in a lot of money. But it didn't? He shook his head. It went wrong. The investor backed out at the last minute, and then you lied about the pension. And I thought you knew about the loans and you were testing me on purpose. I didn't know, Wade, I said quietly. I lied because I wanted to make sure you invited me to live with you out of love, not money. He lowered his head, and I failed the test. Yeah. What happens now, Mom? Wade asked. Am I going to go to jail? I don't know, I answered honestly. It depends on how the investigation goes. You can withdraw your statement, he said, a pleading tone in his voice. I'll make it right, I promise. I'll pay all my debts, I'll pay you back. Please, Mom, think about Kira, about your family. I watched my son carefully. He seemed sincere, remorseful. But there was something in his eyes, some calculation, some cunning that made me wary. Did you come to apologize or to ask me to withdraw my statement? I asked bluntly. Wade stammered, and that was enough. I think we both need time to think this through, I said, standing up. If you really want to make things right, start by paying off those loans. But how? I don't have that kind of money. Then sell Tracy's new Lexus, I suggested. And maybe think about moving to a smaller house that you can actually afford. Wade's face contorted with anger. You know that's impossible. Tracy would never agree to it. And what would people say if we suddenly moved to some shithole? There it is. Wade's real face. It wasn't remorse that brought him here. It was fear. Fear of legal repercussions. Fear of losing his ostensible well-being. Then you got a problem, son. I headed for the house. Because I'm not going to be your safety net anymore. Mom! He jumped up. You can't do this to me. I'm your son. I turned around. Yes, you are my son, but I won't let you manipulate me or use me anymore. With those words, I went into the house and closed the door. Through the window, I saw Wade stand there for a while, clenching his fists, and then he got into his car and drove away, tires squealing. Lauren found me in the living room where I sat staring into nothing. Tough conversation? She asked, sitting down next to me. Yeah, I sighed. But necessary. So what now, I wondered. All my life I had lived for others, for my husband, for my children, for my work. I'd always put other people's needs before my own. But now, at 65, I finally have a chance to live for myself. Now I will build my own life, I said firmly. I'll find my own place, sort out my finances, maybe enroll in some courses. I want to finally learn to live for myself, not for anyone else. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in Detective Morgan's office, looking at the folders of evidence against Wade on the desk. Mrs. Prescott, we have enough evidence to prosecute, the detective said. The signature on the loan agreements is definitely not yours. Forensics confirmed it's a forgery. What's he in for? I asked. Considering the amount and nature of the crime, from 2 to 5 years. Probably probation, given the lack of prior convictions. Do I have time to think about it? Sure, Morgan nodded. But I must warn you, Mrs. Prescott, if you decide to withdraw your application, the banks could still pursue you. After the meeting, Harris took me to see a small cottage on Clement Street. The house was modest 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a living room, and a backyard with an apple tree. Not a palace, but after living in Wade's den, it seemed like one. Most importantly, it would be mine. I called Wade that evening, arranging to meet him at the cafe. He agreed right away, clearly expecting to talk about the police report. At the cafe, Wade looked gaunt, with shadows under his eyes. His shirt was wrinkled, and his hair wasn't styled with gel. I've been to Detective Morgan's office, I began. They have enough evidence to press charges. I know. They came by with a warrant, took the computer and the files. You're looking at 2 to 5 years, I continued. Probably probation, but a conviction either way. You'll lose your job. Mom, I don't know what came over me. I bought a house, I said, changing the subject. A little cottage on Clement Street. A house? But, why not an apartment? Because I've always wanted a garden. A place where I could grow roses and tomatoes and sit on the porch in the evenings and read books. I didn't know, he mumbled. Of course you didn't. You never asked me what I wanted. After a pause, I continued. I won't press charges under 2 conditions. Wade's face lit up with hope. First, you pay off all the loan debts you took out in my name. Of course, I've already started. Sold Tracy's Lexus for $25,000. And she said yes, not right away, but I had no choice. It was either this or jail for me. And the second condition is that you and Gloria never interfere in my financial affairs again. No investment advice, no loan requests. My pension, my savings, my house, it's mine and mine alone. I understand. That's fair. One last thing, I added. It's not a condition, it's information. I've changed my will. Everything I have will be divided between charitable organizations and a trust fund for Kira. Neither you nor Gloria will get anything. Wade only nodded. This isn't about punishment, I explained. It's about what I realized. My money is what makes you see me as an ATM, not a mother. Without that temptation, maybe we have a chance to build a real relationship. You've changed, Mom. No, I'm just finally being me. Can I, visit you sometimes? He asked tentatively. Maybe, eventually. Right now I need space, Wade. Distance. A week later, I moved into my new house. Lauren helped with the packing, and Harris brought pots of plants for the garden. The first night, the three of us sat on the porch, drinking wine and watching the sunset. Gloria called 2 days later. I heard you didn't press charges against Wade. Yeah, under certain conditions. I never thought you'd give him such an ultimatum. After a pause, she continued. Mom, about what I was saying, about you always favoring Wade. You were right. I didn't realize it then, but I see it now. I did feel differently about you too. And I'm sorry, Gloria. Thank you, she whispered. You don't know how much it means to me to hear that. I wish I could make it right. But the past can't be undone. We can only move forward. I'll come back next month, she said, if that's okay. 2 weeks later, on my way back from the library, I saw Kira sitting on the steps of my porch. What are you doing here? I asked, surprised to see her. I just came by to check on you. Do your parents know you're here? Kira shook her head. They think I'm in photography class. Dad forbade me to see you. Said you were a bad influence on me. Your dad and I, we have a complicated relationship right now, Kira. But that shouldn't affect you. Like I have a choice. But I don't care about inhibitions. You're my grandmother, and I'll come to you whenever I want. We spent the rest of the day digging beds and planting tomato and cucumber seeds. Kira talked about school, about her hobby of photography, about a boy named Josh. Mom and Dad fight all the time now, she said. Dad sold Mom's car, and she still can't forgive him for that. They're also talking about selling the house and moving into an apartment. Grandma, she said suddenly, looking at me seriously, I want you to know that I'm always on your side. Thank you, dear. But you know you don't have to choose sides. You can just love people in spite of their mistakes. Like you love Daddy? Yeah, no matter what, he's my son. A month later, I organized a small dinner at my new home. Harris brought wine, Lauren baked a pie, and I made a casserole. We sat in my tiny living room, talking and laughing like old friends. To new beginnings, Harris proposed a toast. And to old friends, Lauren added. The next day, I was working in the garden when I noticed an unfamiliar car outside the house. Wade got out of it. Hey, Mom, it's a beautiful garden. Thank you. Chuckles. What brings you here? I just wanted to see how you were doing and to tell you that I closed all the loans. Completely. That's good. Can I come in? He asked. I wondered. He looked different, more modest, without the gloss that had always been his trademark. For tea, I decided, opening the gate. It's cozy, he said, looking around. It's nice here. This house is mine, all mine. We're selling the house, Wade said. We're moving to an apartment closer to the center. Tracy got a job at a marketing agency. And you? I got a job at a small finance company, smaller paycheck but stable, and no shady deals. That's good, Wade. I'm happy for you. You are? Even after everything I've done? You know, I've realized a lot these past few months. About myself, about you, about life. And the most important thing I've learned is that you can't build a relationship on money or commitment. It's all about respect and love. And you still, love me? Of course I do. You're my son. But loving doesn't mean letting yourself be used. I realize that too. I'd like to start over, he said quietly. We'll see, I replied. Time would tell. When Wade left, I went back to the garden. The sun was slowly slipping toward sunset, coloring the sky in shades of pink and gold. I looked at my little house, my roses, my new life, and felt a strange satisfaction. Yes, I'd lost a lot, The closeness with my children, the illusions of a family idol. But I had gained something more precious. Myself, my strength, my dignity, my independence. In the meantime, I had my home, my roses, and a little piece of the world where I could finally just be me. And that was enough.